The sky of Vareth 9 had not been blue for 100 years. It hung above the dying world like a brown blanket, thick with dust and ash. Nothing grew in the cracked earth anymore. The rivers had turned to poison long ago. And in the ruins of what was once a great city, the last of the Kethra waited to die. Commander Ithris stood on the broken tower and looked at her people below. They were insect-like beings, tall and thin, with 4 arms and large dark eyes. Once, the Kethra had built cities that touched the clouds. Once, they had sung songs that echoed across the stars. Now, they huddled in the dust like forgotten ghosts. She was old. Her shell had turned gray, and her movements were slow. But her eyes still burned with the fire of someone who refused to give up. Every day for 30 years, she had climbed this tower. Every day, she had sent a signal into the darkness of space. A simple message. A cry for help that no one ever answered. The Galactic Concord had made sure of that. The Concord was an alliance of 12 powerful species who rule most of the galaxy. They decided which planets could trade. They decided which species could travel between stars. They decided who lived and who died. 200 years ago, the Concord had come to Vareth 9. They said the Kethra were not evolving correctly. They wanted to take the Queen Mothers, the sacred leaders who gave birth to all Kethra children. They wanted to change them, to make the Kethra better. The Kethra refused. They would not give up their mothers. They would not let strangers change who they were not, so the Concord left. They blocked all trade routes to Vareth 9. They marked the planet as forbiddens. They told the galaxy that the Kethra were dangerous, primitive, worthless. And then they simply waited for them to die. It was a slow death. Without trade, medicine ran out. Without help, the Kethra could not fix their dying sun. The crops failed. The water turned bad. Generation after generation grew weaker, and the galaxy forgot about them. Ithris closed her eyes and remembered her grandmother's stories. Stories of green fields and clean water. Stories of ships that traveled to distant stars. Stories of a time when the Kethra mattered. Those days were gone now. There were only 10,000 Kethra left. The children were born sick and weak. The old died of hunger. Every year, there were fewer of them. In another generation, maybe 2, there would be none at all. This was what the Concord wanted. A quiet death. A species that simply faded away, forgotten by history. Ithris opened her eyes and reached for the signal device. It was old and broken in many places. She had fixed it so many times that almost nothing of the original machine remained. But it still worked. It still sent its cry into the void. She pressed the button, as she had done every day for 30 years. The signal went out into the darkness. A simple message in the old trade language. "We are here. We need help. Please. Anyone." She did not expect an answer. She never did. But she sent it anyway, because hope was the only thing she had left. Below the tower, the other Kethra went about their sad routines. Mothers tried to find food for their children. Workers tried to repair machines that had broken centuries ago. Young warriors trained with weapons they would never use, because there was no one left to fight. The Kethra were not alone in their suffering. Ithris knew that across the fringe, the forgotten edges of space, other species were dying too. The Orin, beings made of living crystal, had been poisoned when the Concord mined their world and left the water full of toxic metals. The Valuri, gentle people who refused to fight, had watched the Concord take everything from their planet and then abandon them in the empty shell that remained. The Sindari, who could read minds, had been exiled because the Concord feared what they might learn. All of them sent signals. All of them begged for help. And all of them were ignored. The galaxy had decided they were not worth saving. Ithris turned to climb down from the tower. The sun was setting, painting the brown sky in shades of red and orange. It was almost beautiful, in a sad way. She wondered how many more sunsets she would see before the end came. Then she heard it, a sound. Different from the usual hum of the broken machines. Different from the wind that blew through the ruins. It came from above, from the sky, growing louder with each passing second. She looked up. Her old eyes struggled to see through the dust and the fading light. But there was something there. A shape, moving fast. Coming down through the clouds. A ship. Ithris felt her heart stop. A ship. After all these years. Someone had come. But who? The Concord would not send a ship. They wanted the Kethra dead. Pirates would not come to a world with nothing left to steal. Who would travel to the fringe, to a dying planet that the galaxy had erased from its maps? The ship broke through the clouds. It was small, much smaller than Concord warships. Its hull was covered in marks and scars, the signs of many battles and long journeys. It was not elegant or beautiful. It looked tired, like it had traveled very far. On its side, Ithris could see words painted in a language she did not know. Strange symbols. Below them, in the common trade language, were more words. Terran Rescue Soarp, Tisteran. Ithris searched her memory. She had heard that word before, long ago. A new species. Young. The Concord had rejected them, called them primitive and emotional. They were supposed to be nobody. Nothing. The ship landed in the ruins of the old plaza. Dust flew everywhere. Ithris climbed down from the tower as fast as her old body would allow. Other Kethra were gathering, their dark eyes wide with fear and wonder. The ship's door opened. A creature stepped out. It stood on two legs, with 2 arms and soft skin. It had hair on its head and strange round eyes that blinked in the dusty air. It wore simple clothes and carried no visible weapons. It was small. So small compared to the Concord species. So fragile looking. The creature looked around at the ruins, at the dying Kethra who watched from the shadows. Its face changed in a way Ithris did not understand. Later, she would learn that this expression was called sadness. The creature spoke. Its voice was soft, but it carried across the silent plaza. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Rescue Corps. We received your signal. Ithris stepped forward. Her voice cracked from years of disuse. Why? Why did you come? We have nothing. We are nothing. The Concord says we are not worth saving. The human looked at her, and then it did something that Ithris would remember for the rest of her long life. It smiled. The Concord was wrong, Captain Vasquez said. Now, please, tell me, what do you need? And for the first time in 30 years, Commander Ithris felt something she had forgotten existed. Hope. The cargo doors of the Second Chance opened, and Commander Ithris saw something she did not expect. Food, medicine, clean water machines, blankets, tools. The small human ship was filled with supplies. More than the Kethra had seen in 100 years. How? Ithris whispered. How did you bring so much? Captain Elena Vasquez smiled that strange human smile. We packed tight. We knew you would need everything. The humans worked fast. There were only 32 of them, but they moved like they had done this many times before. They set up medical stations. They gave food to the hungry children. They showed the Kethra workers how to use the water, machines, and they asked for nothing in return. This confused the Kethra more than anything. In the galaxy ruled by the Concord, nothing was free. Every gift came with a price. Every kindness hid a trap. They waited for the humans to reveal their true purpose. They waited for the demands to begin. The demands never came. On the second night, Ithris sat with Captain Vasquez by a small fire. The human woman was tired. Her eyes had dark circles under them, and her hands were rough from work. But she still smiled when Ithris offered her a cup of the thin soup that was all the Kethra had to share. Why? Ithris asked again. It was the only question that mattered. Your people are young. You have little power in the galaxy. The Concord has rejected you. Why do you risk everything to help species like us? Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. She stared into the fire, and her eyes became distant, like she was looking at something far away. Let me tell you a story, she said, about how humanity learned what the galaxy really was. 50 years ago, humans discovered faster than light travel. They were excited. They had always dreamed of meeting other intelligent life. They thought they would find friends among the stars. Instead, they found the Galactic Concord. The Concord was old, thousands of years old. The 12 elder species had built an empire that controlled most of known space. They had rules. They had systems. They had decided long ago what kind of species were allowed to join their great civilization. Humanity applied to join. They sent their best diplomats, their greatest scientists, their most beautiful art. They wanted so badly to be part of something bigger than themselves. The Concord said no. The reason? Humans were emotionally unstable. They cared too much about their weak. They wasted resources on their sick and elderly. They let their hearts rule their heads. They were not logical enough, not efficient enough, not cold enough to be part of the Concord's perfect order. The elder species laughed at humanity. They called them children playing at civilization. They said humans would never amount to anything because they could not learn to abandon those who slowed them down. The Concord wanted us to change, Vasquez said. They said if we stopped caring so much, if we learned to let the weak die, if we became more like them, then maybe one day we could join. She looked at Ithris with eyes that burned with quiet anger. We refused. Humanity turned its back on the Concord. They built their own civilization on the edges of known space. They were small and weak compared to the elder species. They had fewer ships, fewer weapons, fewer worlds, but they had something the Concord did not understand. They had stubbornness. They had pride. And they had an idea that the elder species had forgotten long ago, that every life mattered. Every single one. We started exploring the fringe, Vasquez continued. The places the Concord had abandoned. And we found you. All of you. Species left to die because the Concord decided you were not worth saving. She set down her cup and looked at the stars above. When we found the first abandoned world, our leaders had a choice. We could ignore what we saw. We could focus on building our own power. We could try to become strong enough that the Concord would respect us. Instead, we chose to help. The Terran Rescue Corps was born from that choice. Volunteers from every human world came together. They packed their ships with supplies. They flew into the darkness of the fringe. Looking for the lost and forgotten dot, they found the Aran, dying slowly from poisoned water. Human scientists worked for months to create filters that could clean the toxic metals. They found the Veluri, starving on their empty world. Human farmers taught them new ways to grow food in dead soil. They found the Sindari, alone and afraid because everyone feared their telepathic gifts. Human counselors sat with them and said, "We are not afraid of you." Everywhere they went, the humans asked the same question. What do you need? Not, what can you give us? Not, what do you have that we want? Just, what do you need? It was such a simple question. But in a galaxy ruled by greed and power, it was revolutionary. The Concord thinks caring about others is a weakness, Vasquez said. They think compassion makes you soft. They think kindness makes you stupid. She stood up and looked at Ithris with fierce determination. We think it makes us strong. The Kethra commander was silent for a long time. Her people had been abandoned for 200 years. They had learned to trust no one. They had learned that the galaxy was cold and cruel, and did not care if they lived or died. But these humans had traveled across the stars to help them. They had risked their small ships in dangerous space. They had shared their food and medicine with strangers. Why? Because they believed it was right. Because they refused to accept a galaxy where the weak were left to die. Because they looked at the forgotten and saw not burdens, but brothers. The Concord will melt like this, Ithris said finally. When they learn what you are doing, they will try to stop you. Vasquez nodded. We know. They are powerful. You are few. They could destroy you. We know that too. Then why continue? Why risk your own species for strangers you have never met? Captain Elena Vasquez looked at the old Kethra warrior. She saw the years of suffering in those dark eyes. She saw the scars of abandonment and despair. And she saw something else too. Something that had been buried for a long time, but was now beginning to wake up. Hope and strength. And the fierce will to survive. Because you matter, Vasquez said simply. Because everyone matters. And because we made a promise to ourselves when the Concord rejected us. We would never become like them. We would never look at a dying species and say they were not worth saving. She reached out and took the Kethra's four-fingered hand in her small human fingers. We stand with those who have no one else. That is who we are. That is what it means to be human. Ithris felt tears in her eyes. She had not cried in decades. She had thought that part of her had died long ago. She had been wrong. Then we will stand with you, she said. Whatever comes next. And across the fringe, in a dozen dying worlds, other abandoned species were hearing the same message. Other ships with the words Terran Rescue Corps were landing on forgotten planets. Other humans were asking that simple, powerful question. What do you need? The galaxy was about to change. And the Concord had no idea what was coming. 2 years passed. And in those 2 years, miracles happened. Deep inside a purple nebula, hidden from Concord sensors, a space station floated in the darkness. It was not beautiful like Concord stations. It was made of parts from 100 different ships, welded together by desperate hands. It looked like something a child might build from broken toys, but to the species who lived there, it was the most beautiful thing in the universe. They called it Sanctuary. Commander Ithris walked through the main corridor of the station. All around her, she saw things that would have seemed impossible 2 years ago. A Kethra engineer worked beside an Oran crystal being, repairing a power system. A group of Velari children played with human children, laughing in 3 different languages. A Sundari telepath sat with a human counselor, learning to control her gifts instead of fearing them. 17 species lived on Sanctuary now. 17 species that the Concord had thrown away like garbage. 17 species that should have been dead. Instead, they were building something new. They called themselves the Mended. It was a human word that Ithris had come to love. It meant something that had been broken, but was now fixed. Something that had been thrown away, but was now valuable again. Something that had been forgotten, but was now. Remember, it was the perfect name for them. The humans had made all of this possible. But what amazed Ithris most was what they had not done. They had not made themselves rulers. They had not demanded to be in charge. When the Council of the Mended was formed, humans took only 1 seat out of 17. When decisions were made, every species had an equal voice. You saved us, Ithris had said to Captain Vasquez, who now held the title of ambassador. You should lead us. Vasquez had shaken her head. We did not save you so that we could own you. We saved you because it was right. You are not our subjects. You are our friends. Friends? Another human word that Ithris had learned to love. The Mended grew stronger every day. The Aran, whose bodies could survive in the coldest vacuum, became the best shipbuilders in the fringe. They could work in places where no other species could go. The Valori, who had spent centuries as healers before the Concord destroyed their world, opened hospitals on Sanctuary. They treated every wound, every sickness, asking nothing in return except the chance to help. And the Sindari? The telepaths that the galaxy had feared for so long. They became the heart of a new communications network. Their minds could send messages across vast distances instantly. No Concord spy could intercept thoughts. For the first time, the forgotten species could talk to each other without fear. But it was the Kethra who surprised everyone the most. Ithris had thought her people were finished. Their warriors were old and tired. Their spirit had been crushed by centuries of suffering. What could they possibly offer to this new alliance? The humans showed them. "You are not broken," Ambassador Vasquez told the Kethra warriors. "You are survivors. You have endured things that would have destroyed other species. That takes strength. That takes courage. We need that strength." The Kethra began to train again. But this time, they were not training alone. Human soldiers worked beside them, teaching them new tactics, new weapons. The Kethra taught the humans in return how to fight in swarms, how to use 4 arms in battle, how to never give up, no matter how hopeless things seemed. A new army was being born. An army of the forgotten dot every day. More refugees arrived at Sanctuary. Escaped slaves from Concord worlds. Scientists who had fled because they refused to build weapons. Soldiers who had deserted because they could not follow cruel orders anymore. The Mended welcomed them all. "No one gets left behind," became the motto of the new alliance. No one. But not everyone was happy about what was happening in the fringe dot in the Great Hall of the Concord, where the 12 elder species made their laws. Ambassador Thiessen of the Valori stood before the council. The Valori were ancient beings, tall and thin, with skin like polished metal. They had been part of the Concord since its founding. They believed they were the wisest species in the galaxy. "We have a problem," Thiessen said. His voice was cold, like wind blowing across ice. The humans. The other ambassadors shifted uncomfortably. They had been ignoring the humans for years. The young species was too small to matter, too weak to threaten anyone. Why waste time thinking about them? "They are gathering the abandoned species," Thiessen continued. "The ones we disposed of. The failures. The mistakes. They are feeding them, healing them, arming them." "Impossible," said Ambassador Koth of the Drellian Empire. "Those species are dead or dying. They have nothing." "They have hope now," Thiessen replied. "The humans gave it to them. And hope is a dangerous thing." He activated a display. Images appeared in the air above the council table. Sanctuary Station. Ships being built. Soldiers training. Species that should have been extinct, standing tall and strong. "They call themselves the Mended," Thiessen said. 17 species. Working together. Growing stronger. All because a handful of humans decided to care about the worthless. Silence filled the great hall. The elder species looked at the images with a mixture of confusion and fear. This was not supposed to happen. The abandoned were supposed to die quietly. That was how the galaxy worked. What do they want? Asked Ambassador Ilya of the Synth Collective. "That is what concerns me most," Thiessen replied. "They do not seem to want anything. They are not demanding territory. They are not threatening our trade routes. They are simply helping each other. Then what is the threat?" Thiessen turned to face the council. His metal face showed no emotion, but his voice carried centuries of certainty. "The threat is the idea. The idea that the weak deserve to be saved. The idea that compassion is strength. If this idea spreads, if other species begin to believe it, then everything we have built will collapse. He leaned forward, his eyes glowing with cold light. We built this Concorde on a simple truth. The strong survive. The weak die. Resources go to those who deserve them. We do not waste our time or treasure on species that cannot help us. But the humans say otherwise. They say everyone matters. They say no one gets left behind. And the abandoned species are starting to believe them. The council was silent. They understood now. This was not a military threat. Not yet. This was something more dangerous. This was a challenge to everything the Concorde believed. What do you suggest? Asked Ambassador Koth. Thison's answer was simple and cold. We crush them. We destroy Sanctuary. We kill the humans who started this madness. And we make sure that no one ever again believes that the weak deserve anything except death. The council voted. 12 species. 12 votes. The decision was unanimous. War was coming to the fringe. Far away. On Sanctuary Station, Ambassador Elena Vasquez received word of the Concorde's decision. She gathered the Council of the Mended. 17 species looked at her with fear in their eyes. They all knew what the Concorde could do. They had all suffered from Concorde cruelty. They are coming, Vasquez said. They are coming to destroy everything we have built. Then we will die, said an Auran elder. We are not strong enough to fight them. Vasquez looked around the room. She saw the Kethra warriors who had learned to fight again. The Sundari telepaths who had found their courage. The Valori healers who had remembered their purpose. The refugees and survivors and broken beings who had become something new. Maybe we will die, she said. But we will not die alone. We will not die forgotten. We will not die without a fight. She stood tall, and her voice carried across the chamber. They threw you away. They called you worthless. They left you to die in the darkness. But you survived. You found each other. You became the Mended. Now, they are coming to finish what they started. But this time, you do not stand alone. This time, you have us. And we will never abandon you. Commander Ithris rose from her seat. Her old voice rang out strong and clear. Then let them come. We will show them what the Forgotten can do. One by one, the other species rose. 17 voices joined together. A promise. A challenge. A declaration. We stand. The Concorde Armada arrived at Varath 9 like a storm of metal and fire. 300 warships filled the sky, blocking out the stars. Each ship was bigger than anything the Mended had ever built. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a planet. Grand Admiral Solith stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Judgment. He was a Valori, like Ambassador Thiessen, with silver skin and eyes that glowed like dying stars. He had crushed 100 rebellions in his long career. He had burned worlds that defied the Concorde. He had never lost a battle. He did not expect to lose this one. Open a channel, he commanded. Let them hear their doom. His voice echoed across the Varath system, broadcast to every ship and every planet. This is Grand Admiral Solith of the Galactic Concorde. You have committed crimes against the natural order. You have taken species that were meant to die and given them false hope. You have challenged the wisdom of your betters. This is your one chance. Surrender the humans who started this madness. Return to your graves and accept your fate. Do this, and we will grant you quick deaths. Refuse, and we will make you suffer. You have 1 hour to decide. In the ruins of the old Kethra city, the Council of the Mended gathered. They had known this day would come. They had prepared for it as best they could. But seeing the Concorde fleet in their sky made the horror real. They had 47 ships. 47 against 300. We cannot win, said an Auran commander, his crystal body pulsing with fear. The numbers are impossible. We can evacuate, said a Velori elder. "Take the children. Run. Hide. Survive." Ambassador Elena Vasquez listened to them all. She understood their fear. She felt it herself, cold and heavy in her stomach. The Concorde had the power to end everything they had built, but running would not save them. The Concorde would hunt them across the galaxy. They would destroy every world that had given them mended shelter. They would make examples of everyone who had dared to hope that there was only one choice left. "We fight," Vasquez said. The council fell silent. "We fight not because we can win," she continued. "We fight because if we run, they will chase us forever. We fight because the galaxy is watching. We fight because there are millions of species out there who have been told they are worthless, who have been abandoned to die, who have given up hope. Today, we show them that hope is not dead." She turned to face the window, where the Concorde ships hung in the sky like a promise of death. They think compassion is weakness. They think caring about others makes you soft. They think we will break because we love each other. They are wrong. Our love makes us strong. Our compassion gives us courage. Our refusal to abandon each other is the most powerful weapon in the universe. She activated the communication system. Her voice went out to every ship in the mended fleet, to every soldier waiting for orders, to every species that had once been forgotten. "This is Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the Terran Rescue Corps. The Concorde wants us to surrender. They want us to die quietly, like good little failures. Here's our answer. You threw them away because they were not useful to you. You poisoned them, abandoned them, tried to erase them. But here is what you forgot. Broken things can be fixed. Forgotten people can remember. And when you push someone into the darkness, sometimes they find a light you never expected. So, here is our answer, Grand Admiral. Here is our answer, Galactic Concorde. Here is our answer to everyone who ever said these species did not matter. No, we will not surrender. We will not die quietly. We will fight for every life you threw away. We will stand for everyone you told was worthless. And if we die today, we will die free. We will die together. We will die proving that you were wrong about everything. Come and get us." The hour passed. The Concorde did not wait any longer. The battle began. Concorde warships fired first, their weapons lighting up the sky like 1,000 suns. The mended fleet scattered, their smaller ships diving and weaving through the storm of fire. They could not match the Concorde in firepower. They could not match them in numbers. But they had something the Concorde did not understand. They had each other. Sindari. Telepaths linked the minds of every captain in the fleet. They moved as one creature, thinking the same thoughts, reacting in the same instant. When a Concorde ship fired, the mended ships were already moving out of the way. When the Concorde tried to trap them, they slipped through gaps that should have been impossible. The Kethra warriors boarded Concorde vessels in waves. Their forearms made them deadly in close combat. They fought with the fury of a species that had spent 200 years waiting to die. Every blow they struck was for their lost children. Every enemy they killed was for their stolen future. The Aran pilots flew into spaces no other species could survive. They guided their ships through fields of debris and fire, their crystal bodies glowing with determination. They had been poisoned by the Concorde's greed. Now they were poisoned for the Concorde's fleet. Human captains led from the front. When a refugee ship was in danger, human vessels put themselves between the enemy and the innocent. When a gap needed to be held, humans held it. When someone needed to stay behind so others could escape, humans volunteered. "No one gets left behind," they said as they flew towards certain death. No one. The battle lasted for 12 hours. 12 hours of fire and blood and sacrifice. The mended lost ship after ship. Warriors died by the thousands. The evacuation transports fled into hyperspace. carrying children and the wounded to safety. But the Concorde lost too. They lost more than they had expected, more than they had planned for, more than they could afford. Their perfect formations fell apart against enemies who refused to fight like they were supposed to. Their superior weapons meant nothing against pilots who did not care if they lived or died. And then Captain Marcus Chun of the human destroyer Resolution made a choice. His ship was damaged. His crew was mostly dead. The Concorde flagship was preparing to fire on the last evacuation transport, where 3,000 Kethra children were waiting to escape. "All hands, abandon ship," Chun ordered. "Everyone to the escape pods." "That is a direct order." "That is a direct order." His first officer grabbed his arm. "Captain, what are you doing?" Chun smiled. It was a tired smile, but peaceful. "Buying time. Those kids need another 30 seconds to make the jump. I'm going to give it to them. You will die. Everyone dies, Lieutenant. Not everyone gets to choose why." He pushed his officer toward the escape pods. Then, he turned his broken ship toward the Concorde flagship and accelerated to maximum speed. Grand Admiral Soleth saw the human destroyer coming. He ordered his weapons to fire. But it was too late. The Resolution crashed into the far side of the Eternal Judgment at full speed. The explosion lit up the sky. The evacuation transport jumped to safety. 3,000 children lived because one human decided they were worth more than his own life. When the battle finally ended, the Concorde held the field. But it did not feel like victory. 47 enemy ships had destroyed or damaged over 100 Concorde vessels. The mended fleet was scattered, not destroyed. The survivors had escaped into the nebula, where the Concorde could not follow. And worst of all, the galaxy had watched. Every species with access to long-range sensors had seen the battle. They had seen the abandoned rise up. They had seen the humans sacrifice themselves for strangers. They had heard Ambassador Vasquez's words echo across the stars. "We stand." Grand Admiral Soleth looked at the cost report and felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. This was not the end. This was just the beginning. In the nebula, what remained of the mended fleet gathered around Sanctuary Station. They counted their dead. They mourned their lost. They treated their wounded. Ambassador Vasquez stood in the memorial hall, reading the names of those who had fallen. Human names, Kethra names, Orin names, Sindari names, Valori names. So many names. Commander Ithris found her there, alone in the darkness. "We lost," the old Kethra said. Vasquez shook her head. "We survived. The children are safe. The idea is alive. That is not losing, but so many are dead." "Yes." Vasquez touched one of the names on the wall. "Captain Marcus Chun. They died so others could live. They died proving that every life matters. That is not a waste. That is the most important thing any of us could do." Ithris was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke. "My people have a saying. A warrior who dies protecting their hive never truly dies. They live on in everyone they saved." She looked at the names on the wall. "By that measure, these warriors will live forever." Vasquez nodded. Outside, the survivors of the Mended were already beginning to rebuild. Already beginning to plan. Already beginning to hope again. The Concorde had won the battle. But they had not won the war. And deep in the hearts of 1,000,000 forgotten species, a fire was beginning to burn. 5 years changed everything. The war that began at Vareth 9 spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The Concorde had expected to crush the Mended in weeks. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that would not stay dead. Every time they destroyed a fleet, another appeared. Every time they burned a world, 10 more species joined the rebellion, because the galaxy had been watching. And the galaxy remembered. On 100 worlds, slave species heard the story of the battle. They heard about humans who died protecting strangers. They heard about the Kethra who had been abandoned for 2 centuries but never gave up. They heard those words broadcast across every frequency, echoing in every language. We stand. And they rose. The first revolts were small. A mining colony here, a factory world there. But the Sindari telepaths read the message faster than the Concorde could stop it. The Orin engineers taught the rebels how to build weapons from scrap. The Valori healers kept the wounded alive. The humans led raid after raid, striking where the Concorde least expected. The Concorde was strong. They had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had ships and weapons and all the power that time could bring. But they had a weakness they never understood. They did not care about each other. The 12 elder species of the Concorde had always competed for power. They used each other. They betrayed each other. They formed alliances only when it helped them and broke those alliances the moment they became inconvenient. This was how they had always done things. This was what they believed strength looked like. The Mended were different. When a Kethra ship was in danger, Orin pilots flew to help without being asked. When a human colony needed food, Valori farmers sent everything they could spare. When a Sindari telepath was hurt, warriors of every species lined up to donate blood or tissue, or whatever was needed. They did not help each other because it was useful. They helped each other because they were family. And family does not abandon family. In the 3rd year of the war, 2 of the 12 elder species left the Concorde. The Thesari and the Morvax looked at what their alliance had become and felt shame. They remembered a time, long ago, when they too had believed in something more than power. They had forgotten that belief. The humans helped them remember. Without the Thesari and Morvax, the Concorde began to crack. The other elder species blamed each other for the defeats. They hoarded their ships instead of sharing them. They protected their own worlds and let their allies burn. The Mended grew stronger. The Concorde grew weaker. In the 5th year, Grand Admiral Solith led one final attack against Sanctuary Station. He brought everything the Concorde had left. 200 ships against the heart of the rebellion. This time, he swore, he would finish what he started. He was wrong. The battle lasted for 3 days. When it was over, Solith's flagship drifted dead in space. His fleet was destroyed, and the Concorde's power was broken forever. There was no moment of total victory, no great celebration while the enemy surrendered. The Concorde simply fell apart, piece by piece, as species after species refused to follow their orders anymore. Some of the elder species retreated to their home worlds and closed their borders. Others asked to join the Mended. A few tried to fight on alone, but they were shadows of what they had once been. The galaxy was free. On the liberated world of Vareth 9, the Kethra built a monument. It stood in the center of their rebuilt capital, tall enough to touch the clouds that were finally blue again. The monument was made of stone from every world that had joined the Mended. Human granite beside Orin crystal beside Sindari obsidian. On its surface were carved the names of everyone who had died in the war. Every species, every soldier, every volunteer, every child who had not lived to see the victory dot at the base of the monument in 100 different languages were 3 words: "We stand." Commander Ithris, now elder mother of her people, stood before the monument on the day it was finished. She was very old now. Her shell was completely gray, and she moved slowly. But her eyes still burned with the same fire that had kept her climbing that tower every day, sending signals into the void. The first Congress of the Mended was gathered behind her. 31 species now, all standing together. The council had grown since those early days in Sanctuary. New species had joined, drawn by the idea that everyone deserved to be saved. human ambassador David Chun stood with the other delegates. He was the son of Captain Marcus Chun, the man who had crashed his ship into the Concorde flagship to save 3,000 children. David had grown up hearing stories of his father's sacrifice. He had dedicated his life to continuing his father's work. Ithris turned to face the Congress. Her voice was old and thin, but it carried across the silent crowd. I want to tell you about the day everything changed for my people. It was a day like any other. Our world was dying. Our children were starving. I had sent my signal into space, as I did every day, expecting no answer. Then a ship came. She paused, remembering. The faces around her listened in silence. Many of them had similar stories. Many of them had their own moment when hope arrived from the stars. It was a small ship, battered and tired. I did not know what to expect. The galaxy had taught us that kindness was always a trap. That help always came with chains. But the human who walked off that ship asked only one question. She asked, "What do you need?" Tears fell from Ithris's old eyes. She did not wipe them away. That question saved us. Not weapons. Not armies. Not power. A question. Asked with genuine care. Asked by someone who did not know us, who owed us nothing, who had every reason to look away. The Concorde told us we were worthless. They told us to die quietly. They told us that no one would ever care what happened to us. The humans said otherwise. They came to our broken world and told us we mattered. They shared their food when they had little. They taught us to hope when we had forgotten how. She turned to face the human delegation. Ambassador David Chun met her eyes. You did not have to help us. You were small and weak in a galaxy of giants. You had nothing to gain from saving the forgotten. Every logical calculation said you should have ignored us, built your own power, left us to our fate. But you are not logical. You are stubborn. You are compassionate. You are human. And because of that, we are alive today. She raised her forearms, and across the plaza, 31 species rose to their feet. Kethra and Orin, Sindari and Valuri, Dasari and Morvax, human and 100 others, all standing together. All family now. The Concorde abandoned us. Humanity found us. And now? Her voice rose, strong and clear despite her age. Now we stand together. The cheering lasted for hours. 100 years later, a young Valori historian named Thesia traveled to Sanctuary Station. She had been born after the Reformation, after the old Concorde fell apart. She was writing a book about the war, trying to understand how everything had changed so quickly. She found an old human man sitting in a garden near the memorial. His name was James, and he had been a pilot in the war. One of the last survivors of that generation. Thesia sat beside him and asked her question. The same question she had asked everyone she interviewed. Why did your people do it? You were young. You had no power. The Concorde had rejected you. Why did you risk everything to help species you had never met? James was quiet for a long time. He looked at the flowers in the garden. They were from 20 different worlds, growing together in the same soil. A gift from the species humanity had saved. You know, he said finally, I asked Captain Vasquez that same question once. Right before the Battle of Vareth. We all knew we were probably going to die. I wanted to understand why. What did she say? James smiled. It was a tired smile, full of old memories and old pain and old love. She said, because we remember what it was like to be alone, to be told we did not matter, to look up at the stars and see no one looking back. And we decided that if we ever got the chance, we would make sure no one else had to feel that way. Not if we could help it. Not if we could do something about it. He turned to face the young historian. His eyes were bright with tears he had never been ashamed to shed. That is what it means to be human, young lady. It is not about being strong. It is not about being smart. It is not about winning. It is about seeing someone in pain and refusing to look away. It is about standing beside strangers because they need you. It is about believing, against all the evidence, that kindness matters more than power. That is who we are. That is who we will always be. Thesia wrote down his words. She would include them in her book, which would be read across the galaxy for generations, but she never forgot the look in his eyes as he spoke. The absolute certainty, the unshakable faith, the belief that in a universe full of darkness, choosing to stand was the bravest thing anyone could do. And outside the window, in the garden of 100 worlds, the flowers bloomed. Children of a dozen species played in the sunlight. The galaxy was at peace. And on Varath 9, the monument still stood. 3 words carved in 100 languages. We stand